Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, y'all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought, of course, that I would talk about this little video that I found to be very particularly interesting. And this is going to be a video by that of DontaesBoxingNation. I'm not quite sure if I'm going to review Dante quite as often anymore, just because I don't really think Dante really brings a whole lot more else to the table other than certain biased narratives that at times I think that I need to commentate on. But I do think that there are other channels or other conversations that I can probably review that would be a little bit more intellectual. But anyways, in this video, I just thought that it was very interesting because, of course, it has been a very big year of boxing. We've had David Benavidez versus Caleb Plant. Last night, of course, we had Emmanuel Navarrete versus Oscar Valdez. We are going to have Canelo Alvarez versus Jamel Charlo next month. We had Lomachenko and Devin Haney, Josh Taylor versus Teofimo Lopez, Inoue versus that of Stephon Fulton, Crawford versus Spence, and I'm sure there's some other fights that I'm personally forgetting about. Gervonta Tank Davis versus Ryan Garcia, and the list goes on and on and on. Well, apparently there is the possibility of there being another great matchup or the possibility of there being another great fight out there on the table, potentially between that of the 168-pound, probably number one contender between Mr. David Benavidez, the Mexican monster, as many people would so call him, and Demetrius Boo Boo Andrade, who of course has been looked at as one of the greater talents within that from the 154 to 160 pound weight divisions. Unfortunately for himself, he has been not able to find that big fight so far yet in his career. And, Andrade, I think, is a very decent fighter, but I'm not quite sure if he ever overall was quite the talent that many people alleged him to be. But once again, if this fight does end up happening, this is going to be proved about who is the more talented fighter or who is going to be the better fighter. Now, certain people may say, well, that's not fair because Demetrius Boo Boo Andrade, this would be, the biggest fight of his career, and he's not a guy that was a natural 168 pounder. Well, Andrade is a guy that when you take a look at him, he's naturally bigger than someone like that of an Araceli Lara or that of a Canelo Alvarez. When you take a look at Demetrius Boo Boo Andrade, when you take a look at Jamal Charlo, these are guys that are a little bit bigger than Canelo. Now, Canelo is a little bit stockier than those guys, but Andrade and Jamal Charlo, those guys are anywhere from like 6 foot to 6'2". Andrade is around, that height, I believe, of 6'1" to 6'2". He's very lengthy when it comes down to it, or at least somewhat lengthy. And on top of that, he's not a small guy. Now, do I believe that he's necessarily a natural 168 pounder? No, but I would probably say that he's around a natural 160. But one could debate that he could fit relatively well within the 168 pound weight division. Because when I take a look at Jamal Charlo and Demetrius Andrade and Caleb Plant, for example, and Anthony or Andre Durrell, I really don't see that big of a difference in terms of the size, not even just the height and the reach, but also the the girth wise of their body and really just the thickness. Now maybe I could be wrong, but this is hands down going to be the biggest fight of both of their careers, at least at the current moment in time. It's certainly going to be the biggest fight of Demetrius Boo Boo Andrade's career if he ends up facing that of David Benavidez. And you don't really know completely how this fight is going to turn out. But I think that it would be very interesting. The winner of this fight, of course, would more than likely have to face that of Mr. Canelo Alvarez. Whether Canelo Alvarez wanted to face either one of these fighters or not, he would have to fight one of those guys. It would look very bad if he did not fight the winner of this fight. But anyways, when it comes down to it, Dante's Boxing Nation is going to talk about it. Let's tune in.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? So we've heard a lot of reports that David Benavidez and Demetrius Andrade are in serious negotiations for a fight in November. And David Benavidez, he just came out and he just confirmed that the reports are true.
I feel good, man. We're trying to get a fight with Munguia, so the reason how the boo-boo even came up, we were already ready to finalize the fight with Munguia, and then last minute him and his team backed up.
Isn't it interesting that these guys are not alleging that David Benavidez, that he is avoiding that of David Morrell, someone who is within the natural 168 pound weight division. because David Benavidez and his team, I believe, turned that fight down as of recent. But they're going to go on and fight Demetrius Andrade, who really has only had one fight there, and he's not too experienced. Isn't it interesting that with Canelo Alvarez, whenever he fights someone like Jamal Charlo or Gennady Golovkin, or he's about to fight one of these guys, oh, well, you're bringing them up to your weight division. Like that's allegedly supposed to be a major advantage because Canelo Alvarez is such this huge 168-pounder. Now, I understand the mindset of thinking that it's a slight advantage, but at the end of the day, if you're supposed to be allegedly better than Canelo Alvarez, like a lot of these guys love to so-called claim, moving up one weight division and you can't beat Canelo Alvarez, who allegedly is such this limited fighter. Now, you in a way did it recently against Stephon Fulton. Terrence Bud Crawford did it, against a certain amount of other fighters. Of course, they were a little bit more experienced at times in their other weight classes. But when it comes down to it, if you're truly an all-time great level fighter, that size difference is not going to be that massive of a size difference, at least not in boxing. And Canelo, once again, I'm sure that he's grew a little bit more at the 168-pound weight division, but he's not a natural 168-pounder. When you take a look at his fights against Caleb Plant, Billy Joe Saunders, when you take a look at his fight against Danny Jacobs, he was smaller against all those guys. Now, against Danny Jacobs, I was at 160 pounds. But even this fight overall against John Ryder, like Canelo was not as big as these guys, man. Canelo Alvarez is not as big as these guys. And even for how stocky Canelo Alvarez is, Canelo is not as stocky as some of these guys either. Once again, he's a guy that's pretty girthy. Like, he reminds me a lot of Gervonta Tank Davis. He has a great chin, and on top of that, he has great power and great skills. And he's decently thickly built when it comes down to it. So he's going to be able to take a little bit more damage than that of the natural 160-pounder. But a big part of the reason why Canelo Alvarez has also done what he's done is because of his non-for-real skill set. That's not me saying that he does not have any holes within that of his style. His feet are not necessarily the best when it comes down to it, and at times he has a little bit of a problem defending the jab, or at times dealing with fighters that can fight very well on the back foot. But he has adjusted a little bit to that. He has adjusted some of those problems. So once again, for those of us that do know boxing, we know that Canelo, at least at his peak, at his best, that yes, he is an all-time great level fighter. All right, doesn't mean that he's on the same level as Floyd Mayweather or Manny Pacquiao or Sugar Ray Leonard or some of those guys, but Canelo Alvarez is an all-time great fighter. And that's why I always say that with his resume and what he's done and his dominance and his skill set, he would be at least within my top 30 fighters of all time. Because there's no way that you're going to sit here and tell me that certain fighters like Oscar De La Hoya, Miguel Cotto, Marco Antonio Barrera, Juan Manuel Marquez, Eric Morales, Bernard Hopkins, there's no way that Tommy Hearns, there's no way you're going to sit here and tell me all these fighters that lost a multitude, several of the bigger fights in their career, no way that you're going to sit here and tell me that those guys are greater than Canelo Alvarez. No way.
So unfortunately, we weren't able to get that fight, but now it's looking not 100%, that's going to happen, but maybe 90%. So we're just crossing our fingers, hoping everything comes out good with that, and hopefully we fight him in sometime in November.
The reason why there's a very good chance that this fight is coming to fruition because it is the best option. There's really no other options that David Benavidez has right now. There's really no options that Demetrius Andrade has right now. Andrade, he was chasing the Jamal Charlo.
I agree overall from a logical and objective standpoint overall that this would be the best fight in my personal view. And I think that from, once again, a logical standpoint for David Benavidez' side, that you would prefer this fight than that of the David Morrell fight. David Morrell, of course, is more suited at 168 at the moment. And once again, isn't that so interesting that these guys, they have no complaints about David Benavidez, about David Benavidez fighting a guy that, he's coming up and, he just only fought one fight at 168 and blah, blah, blah. All this other stuff. If this were Canelo Alvarez, they'd be saying all these excuses about, oh, well, he's only had one fight there and, he just came up and why are you fighting him and all this other stuff. Even right when he was allegedly about to face Jamal Charlo, Jamal Charlo did not look his best. Andrade, now, I think he looked dominant in his last fight, but even Andrade said that he struggled a little bit, I believe, in his last fight to make the adjustment to that of 168 pounds. There's no words on it. There's no words on that whatsoever. But why is there a reason overall why Dante is changing his mind. The reason why that is once again they're using David Benavidez as a pawn. And once again, Canelo Alvarez is the main threat. Even if Demetrius Andrade, even if he is a sacrificial lamb, whoever wins this fight, they can use to get to that of Canelo Alvarez. Of course, they will prefer Demetrius Bubu Andrade to win the fight. But if David Benavidez does end up winning the fight, they'll just say that Demetrius Andrade was a little bit older. He was still coming up to 168, blah, blah, blah. Are they going to, keep the same standards with Canelo? No, of course not. But once again, the reason why I talk about Canelo Alvarez so often, usually on this channel, is to show you that he is one of the big main threats. He is one of the main faces of boxing, if still not the main face of boxing right now, just in terms of his popularity. And on top of that, he's still one of the top pound-for-pound fighters. What the new media and the LDBC objective is trying to tell you is that Canelo Alvarez, he's just this hype job. He's not a great fighter. He's never been a great fighter. He's just been always more hype than that of substance. Of course, for those of us that actually know boxing, we know that that's not the case, at least not, completely. Canelo has a lot of great substance within his career. He has a great resume, not just a great resume, but an all-time great resume, period. But that is the objective, once again, of the LDBC and new media, all right? That is the objective of them.
Fight, and David Benavidez, he was chasing the Jaime Munguia fight. And both Jamal Charlo and Jaime Munguia.
But once again, just to talk about it logically, I think that the Demetrius Bubu Andrade fight is better for that of David Benavidez, because David Morrell right now, what would really be the main factor in facing him? He doesn't have a legitimate belt. He's very inexperienced. It's almost kind of like that with the Terrence Bud Crawford and Jerome Boutsenna situation. Terrence Bud Crawford is taking a look at Jerome Boutsenna right now, and he's like, what do you really bring me? There's a certain amount of people that, of course, will probably say that Terrence is about to duck Jerome Boutsenna, but it's like, what does he really bring to the table for me? At the end of the day, yeah, he's a very talented fighter, but he's never won a belt. And if I beat him, people are just going to say that, he was inexperienced. And if he beats me, then it's a bad look. On top of that, you don't have a belt. You're not on any pound-for-pound list, at least for someone who's logical. He's not on a pound-for-pound list. I'm going to go after Jamel Charlo and Tim Tszyu and try to become the third undisputed champion within a third weight class, or undisputed within a third weight class, and then I'm going to retire undefeated, and then my name is immediately propelled with that of the all-time greats, like that of Manny Pacquiao, Sugar Ray Leonard, Floyd Mayweather Jr., Muhammad Ali, Rocky Marciano, whoever the hell else you want to put up there. Whoever's within your top 20 to top 30 of all time, top 10, whoever the hell else you put up there. So why would Terrence want to fight Jerome Boutsenna at the current moment in time? It's kind of the same thing with David Benavidez. Why would you want to fight David Morrell, a guy who's very, very, very dangerous? He has great power. He has great boxing ability. On top of that, he's very inexperienced. So if you beat him, then there's going to be no guarantee that you get as much credit. If you don't beat him, it's going to look even worse on you. There's just really not a great deal of facing him. Now, Demetrius Andrade, he's never really fought anyone throughout his career that can ever be classified as A grade, but he at least has a little bit of a fan base. He's a guy that many people have been clamoring to fight Jamal Charlo and Canelo Alvarez and Gennady Golovkin, etc., etc. So this would be the better option for David Benavidez. I don't consider you fighting a guy that is either more experienced or probably a better option for you in that regard, and still a talented guy. I don't really consider that a duck.
Yeah, basically pulled out of those fights. Charlo, he was not ready.
Unless, of course, that he is hands down the best guy, and there's really no one else, that you really need to face. Like when Mikey Garcia hightailed it out of there of the 135-pound weight division to avoid Vasily Lomachenko, or when Kell Brook did it to go on the suicide mission against Gennady Golovkin, he did that to avoid Errol Spence. Those are what I would call real ducks.
To take that fight, and Jaime Munguia, according to Steven Espinoza, he was never even serious. They were never serious when it comes to even taking the David Benavidez fight.
We had a lot of discussions.
Just to talk about Jaime Munguia really quickly, Jaime Munguia, I believe, is going after Edgar Berlanga next, and that is the right fight to make for both of them. Because that pretty much is going to be a 50-50 fight. I don't really know who's going to win that fight. If it would have been a few years ago, I probably would have bet on Edgar Berlanga, because I've never been really truly impressed with that of Jaime Munguia. I think that both fighters are very raw with their skill set. and I don't think that either of them have showed massive improvement. I think the day that Jaime Munguia finally gets in the ring with someone who is truly A-grade level, I think that he's going to get majorly exposed, and it looks very similar to that of Edgar Berlanga. That is more of the right fight to make for Jaime Munguia than that of the David Benavidez fight, because if he fights David Benavidez, moves up one weight division, and he clearly has a lot of faults within his style, he's going to get eaten up for lunch against David Benavidez. I'd have no doubt about that. Now, Jaime Munguia is a very devastating puncher, but David Benavidez, in my view, he would just be the all-around better fighter, the more experienced fighter, and the more confident fighter. And it'd be very interesting to see how Jaime Munguia would react to the type of pressure that David Benavidez would put on him. And I do not predict that, I'm not going to say that he wouldn't react to it well or that he would mentally crumble, but I think that it would just overwhelm him a little bit too much. To beat David Benavidez, you're going to have to prove to him that you can outbully the bully, or that, you know what, I'm going to stand up to you. I'm not going to back up the whole entire time. I'm going to make you feel my shots, and I'm going to make you back up a little bit, and then what can you do now? So if Canelo or Demetrius Andrade fights David Benavidez, that's what they're both going to have to do against David Benavidez. I would give Canelo Alvarez a little bit more of a shot, but Demetrius Andrade has a shot against David Benavidez as well.
Without, giving away too much, there were morale discussions, there were Munguia discussions. Munguia discussions didn't go very far. They were not interested in Benavidez at all. I think they're focusing on Berlanga for whatever it is. So, look, we've always said along the way, at 168, you can put any of these guys in, whether it's, Charlo once he gets to 168, or Benavidez, or Plant, or Andre. And so, it really comes down to what's the quickest and easiest and best fight to make immediately, and that looks like it's going to be Andre.
So it's a really good sign that Steven Espinoza and David Benavidez, they're pretty much saying the same thing. They're on the same page. It's just crazy to think that David Benavidez, he's going from possibly fighting against Jaime Munguia to fighting against Demetrius Andrade. I feel like David Benavidez, he's going from being a favorite in a Jaime Munguia fight to being an underdog in the Demetrius Andrade fight. If this fight does come to fruition, it's going to be a serious uphill battle for David Benavidez.
Well, Dante, I think that you would be one of the few people that would claim that David Benavidez would be the underdog against Demetrius Boo Boo Andrade. But Dante, of course, he and he has the right to his own opinions. But you can tell that the majority of the time when he favors fighters, it's basically that, which American black fighter can I favor today? it's usually like that, unless he feels that he has to create some sort of excuse, like Deontay Wilder against Fury, or the Charlo brothers against Canelo Alvarez, something like that. But, he has the right to his own opinion. And just because someone, predicts a certain fighter to win, I don't have a problem with it. It's just that I don't think Dante has ever been a super duper intelligent commentator. I don't think that, he knows how to break down a boxing match to the best of his ability. And don't get me wrong, that's not me saying I have not gotten predictions wrong. There were 3 big fights this year where I ended up getting the prediction wrong, but I don't mind you getting a prediction wrong necessarily. It's going to happen because in sports, it's just unpredictable. But I like to see a certain amount of logic and proof behind your statements. Like even some of the things that Ego was saying, even though he predicted Errol Spence, he was saying a lot of things that in my view made sense. You could tell that he watched Terrence Bud Crawford's fights, and I had a lot of the same worries. But if you're just going off of Demetrius Andrade because, he's very skilled and he can fight a little bit on the back foot and all that sort of stuff. Listen, Demetrius Andrade is a very good fighter, but I really don't know how great he actually is. A lot of people, once again, they've been hyping this dude up for the better part of 10 years. I don't really know how good he actually is. And to be quite honest with you, it's not like Demetrius Andrade to me. Like, I've never seen a Demetrius Andrade performance and never said, wow, that's one of the best fighters in the world. I've never seen a performance like that. I've never seen a performance where I thought he was an Usyk or a Canelo or a Crawford, or a Gervonta Tank Davis or Stevenson or, Lomachenko, Tyson Fury. I've never seen a performance like that from him. Now, maybe it's just me, but once again, it'd be very interesting because we've kind of already seen what David Benavidez can do in a big fight against Caleb Plant. I thought David Benavidez won that fight about 8 rounds to 4. We don't truly know what Demetrius Andrade is going to be able to do. And we've seen 2 fighters in Inoue and Crawford most recently that were able to really step up their game in clearly the biggest fights of their career. And not only were they able to step it up, but they were dominant. So once again, it's going to be interesting. Is Demetrius Andrade, is he going to have a similar performance If I had to guess, probably not. I believe he's a little bit long in the tooth. I think he's about 36, 37 years old. On top of that, he has no experience with someone that type of size in a professional fight. And on top of that, no one that has ever been that dominant or skilled in the ring. It's no offense against Andrade, and I'm not blaming it all on him. Billy Joe Saunders, of course, pulled out of the fight. He was caught on PEDs. Golovkin and Canelo and Jamal Charlo have all seemed not interested to fight him in the past, and possibly even a couple of other fighters. But, once again, at the end of the day, I can't not blame it all on Demetrius Andrade because he did re-sign with Top Rank a couple of times. And on top of that, there was also a couple of other fights that he turned down or did not take that I thought maybe he could have. So it is what it is. So like I said, we'll see.
Benavidez, because he's fighting a man who has been looking for an opportunity like this for years and years and years. And I just feel Andrade...
Well, let me tell you this. Both of these fighters are hungry. For Demetrius Andrade, it basically is his only chance. If he does not win this fight, he can kiss that fight against Canelo Alvarez, Jamal Charlo goodbye, because all they're going to say is, see, that dude's a bum. He just lost. Because those two fighters never really wanted to face Andrade in the first place. Andrade is a guy that, he's another one of these guys that is a little bit too tricky overall for his own good. And on top of that, he's a guy that just has no fan base. I'm not saying that he doesn't have any fan base, but Andrade was never one of the more popular fighters in the world. He just doesn't bring a whole lot to the table unless he has a lot of belts or, unless he's bringing something else to the table. So Andrade is going to have to win this fight. For Andrade, it really means a lot for him because this is do or die. If David Benavidez loses this fight, he might be able to possibly come back a little bit, maybe become a champion later on. If Andrade loses this fight, he is done. He is over. Unless, of course, Jamal Charlo or Jamel Charlo lose, and he can possibly get a fight against them. But they may not even fight Demetrius Andrade. We'll see.
Did to Errol Spence, that just motivates him even that much more, on top of him already being a very extremely talented fighter. Now, there's no doubt about it. David Benavidez has a very good chance of winning this fight because he has a lot of power. He has an equalizer. He can get you out of there with one punch, or he can just discourage.
Well, David Benavidez, in my view, he's never really been, and I never really got this myth, he's never really been a one-shot knockout guy. Now, can he hurt you with one punch? Yeah, he can hurt you, but it's really punches and bunches for David Benavidez. But the question about this fight would be that, would David Benavidez's volume, would it be accurate enough, and would his defense be good enough, and his chin hold up well enough against Demetrius Boo Andrade? And for Andrade, the question would be is that, would he be willing to exchange with David Benavidez or keep him honest with a good jab and a good left straight down the pipe, or keep him off of him? Because Andrade, he cannot win this fight just by going on off of the back foot the whole entire time. He's going to have to try to keep this fight within mid-range. He's going to have to really try and show Benavidez, no, you're not just going to bully me. You're not just going to push me up against the ropes and bully me. Because if that's what this fight turns into, I promise you David Benavidez is probably going to win this about 9 rounds to 3 or 8 rounds to 4. But if Andrade can prove to David Benavidez very early on that I'm not afraid overall to get hit with you by sometimes, or I can handle your power, I'm going to go mano a mano with you. I'm not afraid to stay within the mid-range. You're not just going to scare me and back me up the whole entire time. I can hit you. I can hurt you. And if Demetrius Andrade can do that, he has a very decent chance of possibly pulling it off.
A fighter after he lands a couple punches. But if fighters like Caleb Plant, Ronald Ellis, and Anthony Durrell had success against David Benavidez, it's hard for me to see David Benavidez beating Demetrius Andrade. Because I truly believe
I think Caleb Plant and Andrade are pretty much, in my view, around the same caliber, to be honest with you. I would say that Andrade is slightly ahead of Caleb Plant at his best, because I would say he's a little bit more multi-dimensional and a slightly better athlete. But that's going to be revealed in this fight.
The best David Benavidez shows up and the best Demetrius Andrade shows up, Andrade wins the fight almost hands down. So, but we'll see how this...
Well, we'll see about that, Dante, once again, because no offense against you, but you're not the sharpest boxing commentator in the world.
Fight plays out. We'll see if the fight gets announced soon. That's all I got for now, guys. I'm on to the next one. All right, now check this out, guys.
But anyways, that's pretty much about it for today. I would love to see this fight, because really the pressure on both fighters would be immense. The pressure would especially be on Mr. Demetrius Boo Andrade, but the pressure would really be on both of them, because if they do not end up winning this fight, they can pretty much kiss that Canelo Alvarez fight goodbye.
You're looking to...
But anyways, that's pretty much about it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I would love to see this fight. I really do hope it gets made. If I had to guess, allegedly it's about 90% done. Do I believe that? I'm not so sure about that. But I would say that, this fight has a 50-50 shot at happening. If I had to more than likely guess, David Benavidez is probably not going to fight Andrade next, or this fight is not going to get set up. But if it does, it would be great. So we'll see. But anyways, that's pretty much about it for today. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll talk to you all later.